just a hack. He's just an absolute hack. And he gets his ass kicked by his teammates every week. It's just, it's terrible. It's just terrible.
The one firing that we've all been waiting for just finally happened. Auburn is firing head coach Bryan Harsin. This comes right after they got a new athletic director, John Cohn, who's coming from Mississippi State. Apparently, he didn't want to waste any time, and he wanted to start that search for a new head coach. Now, I don't think anyone's shocked by this news. This is not unexpected. Bryan Harsin has underwhelmed in his time at Auburn. It also seems like from the outside looking in that a lot of the players didn't really respect or like Bryan Harsin, and then also the boosters were not big fans of Bryan Harsin. So he's out the door. The results were not there. Now puts them in a position where they need to get this hire right, and they need to get somebody that is going to have an immediate, massive impact. There's always a number of different directions that could go here. Do you try to coerce a head coach at another big program in the SEC or maybe in the Big 12? Do you potentially go for a Group of 5 program, which basically is what they just did when they hired Bryan Harsin in the first place from Boise State? I think it's unlikely that they go in that direction, but there are names to consider for that circumstance. But the big one for me here, and the one guy that has to be hired by Auburn, it's got to be DeLeone Sanders. DeLeone has been teasing this for so long. Part of me wonders over the past couple of weeks when it's been brought up more and more that if the right offer came, he'd be crazy not to entertain it. Maybe he's already been having conversations with Cohen, who was in place to take over this athletic director gig. The one thing that we know with DeLeone Sanders in his time at Jackson State, while I have thought that he likely wouldn't leave at this point in time because his son is there and he went and got Travis Hunter, who was the top rated recruit in his class, this opportunity makes perfect sense for him. DeLeone Sanders has recruited at a location, an HBCU, an FCS program that wouldn't even come close to getting the recruits that they typically get. The results on the field have been very, very high, but the main reason why DeLeone makes sense is that recruiting aspect. The fact that he can go out there, convince any kid to come play for him, it is going to be huge for a program like Auburn that under Harsin really struggled in recruiting. There weren't very many big names that were coming to play for Auburn. And if you want to compete with your biggest rival in Alabama, you need to compete in the recruiting ranks. Now, the second most likely option here for Auburn is hiring Dan Mullen, who is currently unemployed and working in a broadcast booth. Dan Mullen makes a ton of sense because of his connection to Cohen and his time at Mississippi State. And I know that the results at Florida weren't great, but if anyone is going to be hired for a big option here in an SEC program, it's going to be Dan Mullen. Unless that maybe he has aspirations to coach at a smaller program to get himself back into the conversation with less pressure, he is going to be brought up in this conversation because of that connection to Cohen. The last one, very simple. It's somebody who is always being thrown out there, is Jamie Chadwell from Coastal Carolina. Chadwell has produced a lot of success for Coastal Carolina. They have been a very underrated program over the years, and they are very explosive on offense with a very unique offensive approach. If they do want to go in that direction of hiring someone who is outside of the Power 5, if they want to risk that again after the Harsin firing, which again, I believe is unlikely, Chadwell is going to be the first name that is brought up. You go and look what Tennessee did and going and getting Josh Heupel from UCF, or even Florida going and grabbing Billy Napier from Louisiana. He is the next man up from the Group of 5 programs if they're willing to go in that direction. If you think I missed anyone, comment it below. Let me know who you think that Auburn is going to sign as their next head coach.